By the time Mark Deller reached the payment kiosk, the garage already had his car marked as exited. The screen showed his plate number, his gray Accord, and a departure time, 6:11 p.m. The problem was Mark was still standing beside the car. It was 9:04. Before this gets worse, comment where you're listening from tonight. City, state, or country is enough. Mark looked from the kiosk to the Accord idling behind him. At first, he assumed the scanner had picked up the wrong plate. It happened. He had seen people argue with parking machines before. He pressed the help button. A woman answered through the speaker with the flat patience of someone near the end of a shift. "Ticket number?" Mark read it off. There was a pause, then keyboard taps. "That ticket has already been used to exit." "It hasn't," Mark said. "I'm still here." "Vehicle exited at 6:11 p.m. I'm standing in front of it." The speaker clicked, and after almost a minute, a night attendant came out of the booth. He was heavyset, in a navy jacket. His name tag said Harris. Harris glanced at Mark's car, then at the kiosk. "You got another ticket?" "That's the only one." Harris took the ticket, walked back into the booth, and waved Mark to the window. On the monitor, the transaction was already open. Plate, make, model, color, payment card, exit time. All of it matched. Harris tapped the glass near the screen. "System says you left 3 hours ago." Mark tried to laugh, but it came out dry. "Then open the gate for the ghost version of me, and I'll follow him out." Harris did not laugh. He clicked through another screen. "There's a camera capture." The image was grainy, washed out by the ramp lights, but it was his car. Same dent above the left rear wheel. Same faded university sticker in the back window. Same plate. The Accord was halfway through the raised gate at 6:11. The driver was impossible to see. A white smear of reflection covered the windshield where the face should have been. Mark turned slowly. His Accord was still behind him, engine running, exhaust drifting in the cold ramp air. Harris said, quietly, "That's weird." That was when the gate behind Mark dropped. Not the exit gate, the one between the payment lane and the lower garage level. The lane behind him sealed with a metallic thump. Harris picked up the phone inside the booth. "Control, I've got a duplicate exit on Monroe." Mark heard only Harris's side. "No, he's here." "No, the vehicle is physically present." Then Harris frowned. "What do you mean, no active vehicle?" He put the phone down slowly. Mark's mouth had gone dry. "What?" Harris shook his head. "Central system doesn't show your car in the garage anymore. I can't raise the gate because there's nothing assigned to release." Mark pointed at the Accord. "It's right there." "I know." "So, override it." Harris tried. Once, twice, a third time. Each time, the exit gate stayed down. Then the kiosk screen changed. Not to an error message, to a new charge, re-entry fee pending. The screen now showed Mark's plate entering again at 9:07 p.m. Mark looked at the ramp behind him. The entry lane was 2 floors below. There was no way his car had just entered while sitting between the gates. His phone buzzed. A toll alert from his banking app. $4.80 charged at the Harbor Tunnel Plaza. Mark lived 20 minutes from there. Another buzz. A red light camera warning attached to his license plate. Harris had gone pale. "Turn off the engine," he said. Mark did. The garage seemed louder after that. Pipes ticking, fans humming. A distant tire squeal from a level above them, though no cars came down. Harris stepped out and walked to Mark's car. He circled it once, then bent near the rear plate and rubbed his thumb over the registration sticker. Then he looked through the back window. "What?" Mark asked. Harris did not answer. There was a folded paper on the rear seat. It had not been there before. Mark kept the back seat empty except for an old canvas grocery bag. Now the paper sat in the middle of the seat, white against the dark fabric. He unlocked the car and opened the rear door. Harris backed away. The paper was a parking receipt. Same garage. Monroe Street exit. 6:11 p.m. Paid in full. At the bottom, below the printed total, someone had written in blue pen, "Don't try to leave twice." Mark did not touch it. Harris whispered, "I'm calling police." But when he picked up the booth phone, the monitor changed again. The exit record disappeared. Then the re-entry record disappeared. Then Mark's active ticket disappeared. For a moment, the screen showed nothing but the garage map. No gray Accord, no trapped vehicle, no pending fee. Just an empty exit lane. The two gates rose at the same time. Harris did not move. Mark should have driven out, but he kept staring at the receipt. The handwritten ink was still wet. Harris whispered, "Go." Mark got in and drove through the exit without paying. Outside, Monroe Street was wet and empty. Mark made it 3 blocks before another toll alert appeared. Same plate, same Harbor Tunnel Plaza. This one was time-stamped 9:18 p.m. 2 minutes in the future. At 9:18, his phone buzzed again. A camera image loaded with it. His gray Accord was entering the tunnel. The driver's face was hidden by glare. But in the back seat, pressed against the rear window, was the parking receipt. Same folded corner, same white paper. Mark turned around slowly. His own back seat was empty. The receipt was gone. He sold the car 3 days later to a salvage yard. A week after that, a notice came in the mail. Unpaid parking violation. Monroe Street garage. Time of entry, 6:11 p.m. Time of exit, not recorded. Vehicle status, still inside. Russell Hartman only went to Harbor Lock Storage because the bill had his name on it. Unit C18, monthly rental, late fee applied. He had never rented a storage unit in his life. The woman at the front desk checked his driver's license, typed, and frowned at the screen. "You were here this morning," she said. Russell leaned closer. "No, I wasn't." "It says you checked in at 8:42. "I was at work at 8:42. She turned the monitor slightly. It showed the profile photo on the account, his license photo. Same tired eyes, same crooked collar. "Someone used my license," Russell said. The woman's name tag said Mara. "We scanned the physical ID at rental." "I'm telling you, I didn't rent anything." Mara clicked through another page. "Then you'll need to file a fraud report, but the unit is active under your name." "Is it empty?" She hesitated. That told him it wasn't. Russell asked to see it. Mara took a master key from a drawer and led him through the side door into a long outdoor corridor of orange roll-up doors. It was late afternoon, but the place already had that storage facility silence, the kind where every sound seemed to come from 3 rows over. C-18 was near the back fence. There were 2 locks on it. One was Harbor Lock's red overlock. The other was a small brass padlock, the kind Russell had used on the shed behind his old apartment before he moved. Mara unlocked the red one and pointed to the brass lock. "That one is customer-owned." Russell almost said he didn't have a key. Then he remembered the loose brass key on his ring, the one he had never thrown away because it was small and flat and did not bother him. His hand shook when he tried it. The lock opened. Mara stepped back. Russell lifted the door. The first thing he saw was his floor lamp. Not exactly his. The shade was cleaner, the pole less scratched, but it was the same cheap black lamp from his living room, angled beside a brown armchair that looked almost like the one he sat in every night. There was a coffee table, a television stand, 3 cardboard boxes labeled kitchen, bedroom, office. A framed photograph lay face down on the table. Russell did not go in at first. Mara said, "Sir?" He stepped over the threshold. The air inside smelled like cardboard, dust, and laundry detergent. The arrangement was wrong in a precise way. The couch was where his couch would have been if his apartment were reversed. The lamp stood where his window should be. The rug was the same pattern as his, but the stains were missing. He picked up the photograph. It was the empty corner of his living room where the lamp usually stood. The picture had been printed recently. In the lower right corner, part of his shoe was visible, as if the person taking it had stood behind him without being noticed. Russell set the frame down. Mara's voice came from the doorway. "Do you recognize this property?" "No, but that was not true enough to be useful." He opened the kitchen box. Inside were plates like his, but unchipped. A blue mug like the one he used every morning, except the handle had been broken and glued back badly. His mug at home had the same repair. Russell called his upstairs neighbor, Ellen, who had a spare key for emergencies. "I need you to check something," he said. He told her to go into his kitchen and look for the blue mug. Russell waited in the storage unit, staring at the identical one in his hand. After a minute, Ellen came back on the line. "It's here," she said, "beside the sink." "Broken handle?" "Same ugly glue job." Russell put the mug back carefully. There were footsteps outside the unit. These came from the next row over, slow and steady, dragging something light across the concrete. "Hello?" Mara called. The dragging stopped. Russell looked at the boxes again. The one marked bedroom had smaller writing beneath the printed label. Not marker, pencil, remaining clothes. He opened it. The box was empty except for 3 folded plastic bags. Each bag had a white label, wallet, phone, keys. The last bag was larger. "Russell," Mara said softly, "we should close this." But when Russell backed toward the door, his phone buzzed. A Harbor Lock notification, move out scheduled. Destination address, his apartment. Scheduled time, 7 p.m. It was 6:34. "I want this canceled," Russell said. Mara hurried back to the office with him. She tried to cancel from the front desk computer. The button was grayed out. "Why can't you cancel it?" Russell asked. Mara swallowed. Because the customer already confirmed in person. I am the customer. She did not answer. On the monitor, the account photo had changed. It was no longer his license photo. It was a still image from that morning's gate camera. A man in Russell's jacket stood at the keypad with his back to the lens. The timestamp was 8:42. The man's right hand was lifted toward the numbers. On his key ring, hanging from one finger, was the brass key. Russell looked down. His own key ring was still in his hand. The brass key was gone. Mara called the police. Russell drove home before they arrived. He did not want to be in that facility at 7. His apartment door was locked. The blue mug was beside the sink. The floor lamp was where it had always been. For 20 minutes, he convinced himself the storage unit had been a fraud. Then something knocked once from inside his hallway closet. The closet door opened 2 inches. Inside were 3 cardboard boxes stacked neatly. Kitchen, bedroom, office. On top of them sat the framed photograph from the storage unit. This time, the picture showed his living room as it was now. Except in the photo, Russell was not standing there. The lamp was on, the chair was occupied, and whoever sat in it was wearing his jacket. Claire Voss arrived at the ferry terminal at 7:18, 12 minutes before the last evening crossing. The clerk scanned her ticket, looked at the screen, and said, "You already boarded." Claire thought she had misheard him over the wind against the glass. "I just got here." The clerk turned the monitor slightly, not enough for her to read everything, but enough to show her name highlighted. Claire Voss. Seat 14C. Boarded, 5:10 p.m. Claire looked past him, through the terminal windows, toward the dark water. The ferry she was supposed to take was still tied to the dock, engines running low. "That's not possible," she said. "My ticket is for 7:30. "It was," the clerk said, "but it shows you used the earlier crossing." "I was at work at 5:10. He asked for her ID. Claire handed over her license. The clerk compared it with the screen, then looked uncomfortable in a way that made her more afraid than if he had called it a glitch. "Same ID verification," he said. The terminal was almost empty. A man with a backpack stood near the vending machines. 2 older passengers sat together under the departure board. Outside, gulls moved like torn paper over the black water. Claire asked, "Can you just reissue it?" The clerk clicked twice. The screen gave a low, flat warning sound. "I can't. It says duplicate passenger." "I'm standing right here." "I know." He called over a supervisor named Janice, a square-shouldered woman with ferry authority patches on both sleeves. Janice listened, checked the screen, and printed the manifest. Claire saw her name on the 5:10 outbound list. Then Janice turned the page over. Claire's name was also on the return manifest. Scheduled return, 7:05 p.m. Checked in, 7:02 p.m. Claire went quiet. "The 5:10 hasn't returned," she said. Janice looked toward the dock. The earlier ferry was not at the terminal. It was still somewhere beyond the fog line, a faint strip of lights moving in and out of the rain. The clerk said, "Maybe the return manifest preloaded." Janice did not answer. Claire's phone buzzed. A ferry authority receipt had arrived in her email. "Round trip completed. Thank you for sailing with us." Attached was a passenger survey. The first question asked how she would rate her return crossing. Claire backed away from the counter. A horn sounded across the water. Everyone in the terminal turned. The 5:10 ferry appeared out of the fog 20 minutes late, pushing a low white wall of wake ahead of it. The passengers waiting for 7:30 moved toward the boarding area, annoyed and cold, but Janice lifted one arm and told them to wait. When the ferry docked, nobody disembarked at first. That was the detail Claire remembered later. The ramp dropped, the deck lights flickered, and for nearly 10 seconds, the doorway stayed empty. Then passengers began stepping out in small, silent groups. Claire watched every face. No one looked like her. Janice spoke to a deckhand who had come down the ramp, a young man with rain darkening the shoulders of his uniform. He glanced at Claire, then away. Janice asked him something quietly. The deckhand said, "There was a woman in that coat." Claire looked down at herself. Blue wool coat, missing bottom button, damp sleeves. "I was never on that boat," she said. The deckhand swallowed. "She stood outside on the upper deck most of the crossing." "Did you see her face?" He shook his head. "She kept looking out over the rail." Claire almost laughed because it was too clean, too shaped like a story someone would tell afterward. Then the deckhand added, "But she had your bag." Claire's hand tightened around the strap on her shoulder. He pointed to it. "Same tier by the zipper." Janice asked to see Claire's ticket again. Claire refused at first, then handed it over. Janice scanned it. The screen changed. Ticket canceled. Reason, passenger completed trip. Claire said, "Sell me another one." The clerk tried. Another warning tone. Janice read it without speaking. "What?" Claire asked. The clerk said, "It says you can't board." "Why?" He looked at Janice. Janice answered, "Because you have already crossed and returned tonight." The waiting passengers had begun to stare. Claire felt aware of how she must look, a woman arguing at a ferry counter, insisting a printed list and a terminal system and a deckhand were all wrong. The supervisor lowered her voice. "I'm sorry. You'll need to contact customer support tomorrow." "I need to get home tonight." Janice looked past her, toward the water. "The system won't let us put you on the boat." The 7:30 ferry boarded without her. Claire stood behind the glass and watched it pull away. At 8:04, her phone buzzed again. Another email. Lost item report. A passenger had left a blue canvas bag on the 5:10 return crossing. Item available for pickup at terminal office. Claire looked at the bag, still hanging from her shoulder. The clerk did not want to open the lost and found room, but Janice made him. Inside, on a metal shelf, was a blue canvas bag with a torn zipper. Claire did not touch it. Janice opened it with gloved hands. Inside were Claire's wallet, her house keys, and her phone. Not copies, not close versions. Her phone. Claire reached into her coat pocket. The phone she had been holding all night was gone. The screen on the shelf lit up by itself. One new message, sent from Claire's number to her own contact, made it back. The next morning, the ferry authority refunded her unused 7:30 ticket. They refused to refund the 5:10. Their records showed she had taken that one successfully. They also banned her account for attempting to board twice under the same passenger identity. Claire never took that ferry again, But every Thursday evening, a survey arrives in her email. Same subject line. How was your return crossing? And every week, the timestamp is 7:05 p.m. If you want more quiet horror stories like these, subscribe to Ashlight Archives and tell me which place unsettled you most, the garage, the storage unit, or the ferry.